So we begin our Canto 1, with a one of the most traditional conventions of the epic, of a real epic, of a traditional epic, of we have Pope writing this invocation to a muse. And an invocation is basically an appeal for aid from a muse for inspiration. And in this in the first 6 lines of the 12 lines, he begins by saying, "What dire offense amorous causes springs, what mighty contests rise from trivial things. I sing this verse to Carol, muse is due. This even Belinda may vouchsafe to view. Slight is the subject, but not so the praise, if she inspire and he approve my lays." So, thus the opening of the lines state our theme, and our theme is basically that love affairs lead to serious resentments, hatred, bitterness, anger, dislike, and that these insignificant events may cause great conflicts. So he's saying big things or serious things can happen over trivial matters. And Pope, his muse that he invokes, and this is kind of where the satire comes in, is usually these traditional epics would invoke some sort of muse to poetry, some sort of like grand aspirational preacher or aspirational figure. Like, for example, in Paradise Lost, the muse that Milton invokes is the Holy Spirit, right? And here, what Pope does to kind of turn that convention on its head, he invokes his friend John Carroll, the person that has suggested writing the poem in the first place, and that Belinda, and as well as Belinda, who also inspires it. So he is he is asking the muse, he's asking Carol these three rhetorical questions in lines 6 through or 12. He says, say, what strange motive, goddess, could compel a well-bred lord to assault a gentle belle? Oh, say what stranger cause, yet unexplored, could make a gentle belle reject a lord? In tasks so bold can little men engage, and in soft bosoms dwell such mighty rage. So the poet is basically asking the muse, what strange motive, what would make an aristocrat, Lord Petrie, the Baron, to attack a gentle lady, Belinda, right? What would make him do that? Why would he do such a thing? And stranger still, the thing that he cannot fathom, the stranger motive, what could compel a gentle lady to reject the suit of the Lord? Because we get the sense that the reason the Baron, not the Baron, but Lord Petrie cuts Arabella Fermer's hair is because she has rejected him as a suitor, so he does it out of spite. And then he also says that the third and final question is, why would small men undertake such daring enterprises? Why would this spiteful man do something so spiteful, and why, more particularly, should hearted ladies fly into such a terrible rage? So, in other words, why would these two people, both man and woman, get so bent out of shape out of trivial things? So what he cut the hair, or so what he cut the hair, so what she rejected your 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 proposal to marriage. In other words, he's saying this is a laughable situation. And what we have here is this kind of inversion of nature, where men and women are behaving in a way that's unbecoming. So He's asking these questions to his muse, and I don't know as if he really means to get an answer, but that's certainly the question that his audience would also be asking. So after we have our invocation, we also have this kind of introduction to Belinda, our heroine. She is sleeping in her bed, and we also get an introduction to her guardian sylph, Ariel. Keep in mind that when we see our heroine sleeping, it is past noon, so we get this kind of idea that she is, I don't want to say lazy, but certainly indulgent. She probably has spent the last evening dancing until dawn, with the rest of her social class. So anyways, we have this vision of her sleeping in bed, and we are also told that her sleep is prolonged because her guardian sylph, Ariel, wants to speak to her in a dream. And I want you guys to keep that in the back of your mind because, as we have seen before, dreams are pretty important. So she is told by Ariel, he says, fairest of mortals. And then he begins to tell her that numerous bright spirits, the spirits that he mentions from the beginning in the prefatory letter, keep flying around her all the time. They surround her when she sits at her box in the theater and hover or linger and hang around when she takes her drives through Hyde Park. And the reason that Ariel is saying this to Belinda is he wants to assure her that she is protected in some kind of way. He then goes on to explain the nature of the different categories of spirits, these spirits, what their function is and where they came from. And he tells her that the vanities of women do not die with their death. So basically, these spirits of the air used to be women of society who, because of their vanities or because of something within them, they continue after death to feel an interest in those same vanities that they found pleasure in life. And after death, she might actually, for example, not be able to play cards, but she is able to live vicariously by observing other young women play, right? So she Ariel goes on to say that these beautiful women, when they die at the height of their pride, they return to, they become elements of earth, air, fire, and water. And he tells us of these different types of women, that old women, they turn into fire or salamanders. They turn prudish women, they return to the element of the earth as gnomes, and soft yielding women become nymphs or are associated with water. But the spirits of light-hearted, flirtatious women, women like Belinda, rise up toward in the air and become sylphs like Ariel. And I know you're probably asking yourself, well, why does Pope do this? And I think the answer is that he is trying to satirize or poke fun of those girls of his contemporary age who are keenly aware of their beauty and who are fated to spend their lives tied to the facades of society. So by mentioning these kind of this machinery of the spirits of the air, or these sylphs, or sound, the various elements, Pope is placing Belinda within this kind of framework, where we see her as this idle aristocratic lady who is kind of superficial in all ways, especially in her ambition to marry someone of high stature. So Ariel continues to say that these elements of earth, fire, water, air, etc., these spirits, this machinery, contrives or interfere on behalf of women. So it's kind of like that epic convention of the gods or the goddesses interfering in human affairs, and that's what we have with these sylphs or these spirits, so to speak. So, anyways, we get to his speech goes on for quite some time, but at the end of his speech, he says, "O blind to the truth, the sylphs contrive it all. Of these I am, who thy protection claim. A watchful sprite, and Ariel is my name." So he's saying, my job is to protect you, to keep you safe, to keep this kind of natural order, to keep you beautiful, right? And then he says, "Late, as I range the crystal wilds of air in the clear mirror of thy ruling star." So as I was doing my business in, watching you in the mirror, he saw, alas, some dread event impend. So he sees something in the future, right? Something is going to happen to Belinda. He says, "Ere the main this morning sun descends." So before the sun sets on the night today, like, so before the end of the day, before midnight happens, think, kind of Cinderella, fairy godmother kind of thing. Uh, Something will happen to you. But he says, "Heaven reveals not what or how or where. Warned by thyself, I'm warning you. Keep your ear open. O pious maid, beware. This to disclose is all thy guardian can." All I can do is tell you this, right? I don't know the details, but all I can do is give you my advice, to beware of all, but most beware of man. So he is giving her this warning about her impending fate. And as we know, I mean, what do you think is going to happen with her and this ominous warning from her guardian sylph, this intervention that's meant to save her? I mean, of course, she's going to ignore it. So with Ariel's final words in this bespoken dream, shock, Belinda's lapdog, I mean, think of the irony of the dog named Shock. Shock arouses Belinda from her sleep, and the first thing she sees is a table full of billet doux. And I want to talk very briefly about this idea of billet doux. And it's the French word for love letters. And I think the interesting thing, like the first thing she sees is these love letters, um, wounds, charms, and ardors were no sooner read, but all the vision vanished from her head. So she sees these letters and she automatically forgets everything that Ariel has said in his warning, because she has other things on her mind. And I think the implication with this idea that she's got a table covered, a table full of love letters, is that we get this sense that Belinda has many suitors. She is playing the market, and there are people writing to her, either, there's this thing back in that period of time. You could only write a letter to a woman if she allows it. So it's kind of one of those intimate things, like the lock of hair, etc. That it's kind of questionable. And I think that the fact that she has all of these suitors, we are meant to question Belinda's virtue. Is she this honorable, virtuous maiden, or is there something beyond what we are told, because she does entertain these many men? So she reads these letters, she forgets the warning from Ariel, and then we have this kind of very interesting, and I think it's quite fun, end of the canto where we have the arming of Belinda. And this is kind of a description of her getting ready for the day at her vanity table. She's wearing this white robe where she addresses prayer to the cosmetic powers. And I think that this is interesting because this vanity table, this 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 homage to her appearance, or whatever you want to call it, becomes this kind of pseudo altar that's given these religious connotations, where it's described as being this kind of holy place where she has, and I think the implication is that, Belinda has kind of forfeited all of these good moral things for those of society that are fake, phony, and fake. I mean, that's the best word that I can think. So we see our heroine kind of arming herself for the battle. She looks at her heavenly reflection, and Betty, her inferior priestess is what they call her, which is kind of her dressing maid, assists Belinda in the sacred ceremony of the toilet. And we get this description too of these images on her on her vanity table. There's this treasure chest that's open that reveals all of these precious contents that are brought from different countries around the world. There are brilliant pearls and diamonds of India. There are perfumes from Arabia. There are spotted combs made of tortoise shell. And then amongst all of that, Pope says, puffs, powders, patches, Bibles, billet dough. Now awful beauty, awful meaning, awe-inspiring, puts on all its arms. The fair each moment rises in her charms, repairs her smiles, awakens every grace, and calls forth all the wonders of her face. See by degrees a purer blush arise, and keener lightning quickens in her eyes. The busy sylphs surround their darling care. These set the head, and those divide the hair, and fold the sleeve, while others plait the gown, and Betty's praised for labors not her own. So basically, what we have, and I think that it's important to pay attention to, amongst all of these rows of shining pins and puffs and powders, there is a Bible. And I think that juxtaposition of these images on the table kind of go hand in hand with this kind of duality of purity versus facade, worship of appearance versus worship of a higher power, and also this kind of very serious element with that of what Pope would consider trivial. So we have that idea again of the serious versus the trivial. So the beauty of Belinda is greatly enhanced by these cosmetics and by these ornaments. So it's not a real image of her beauty, right? It's this kind of armor that protects the inside of who she is. But anyways, the effects. These effects are in fact created by the busy sylphs who surround her and take care of each detail of her toilet. But Belinda gives the credit to Betty, who helps in decorating her, rather than the sylphs. So it goes back to this kind of emphasis that she has forgotten everything that Ariel has told her about the dream and about the function of these spirits that surround her. So I think in this scene, what Pope is trying to do is he's satirizing the excessive attention that women pay to their toilet, to their appearance, and the most But the effect that this has essentially is that we see, like in all great epics, our hero or heroine in this case preparing for battle, and the quest or the battle is finding a suitor, and in order to do that she has to put on her armor, and that is the end of Canto 1. So I'm going to stop here and pick up with Cantos 2 and 3, so stay tuned.